In 2009, Susan Boyle became the most famous woman on Earth overnight. But in 2022, a sudden medical emergency silenced her voice forever, and her doctors issued a warning that would break any singer's heart. This is why the Susan Boyle we once knew can never return. It was an ordinary April evening when Susan retired to bed in her modest council house in Blackburn, West Lothian, the exact same home she had lived in her entire life despite amassing a £22 million fortune. But the next morning, when her personal assistant Geraldine arrived to check on her, a chilling reality set in. Susan could walk, but the left side of her face had collapsed. Her mouth drooped, her muscles were profoundly weak, and when she tried to speak, the sounds that came out were slurred, broken, and completely unintelligible. The golden voice that had captivated 250 million people online, the voice that had sold 25 million albums and dominated international charts, had been instantly erased by a devastating stroke. To understand the sheer tragedy of this medical catastrophe, we have to travel back to the phenomenon of her sudden rise. When a 47-year-old, unemployed charity worker walked onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent in 2009, the world was unforgivably cruel. The audience rolled their eyes. Simon Cowell, Piers Morgan, and Amanda Holden openly smirked at her frizzy hair, her plain dress, and her awkward demeanor. Cowell recently admitted on a podcast that watching the footage back makes him feel utterly disgusted with himself, calling it a massive wake-up call because they judged a book by its cover in the harshest way imaginable. But the second Susan opened her mouth and sang the first soaring notes of I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, the mockery vanished. It was replaced by a kind of collective global shock. She was an underdog who possessed an angelic, powerhouse vocal range that defied every superficial rule of the pop music industry. She made £5 million in her first year alone. She achieved 3 successive #1 albums in less than 2 years, breaking records held by the greatest artists of the 21st century. But the machine of fame was grueling. The pressure was immense. And underneath the surface, the physical toll of endless touring, recording, and media scrutiny was quietly compounding. When the stroke hit in 2022, it did not just rob Susan of her career. It robbed her of her very identity. Singing is not merely a function of the throat. It is a highly complex neurological ballet. To produce a pitch-perfect note, your brain must fire lightning-fast electrical signals to synchronize the diaphragm for breath support, the laryngeal muscles to manipulate the vocal folds, and the facial muscles to articulate vowels and consonants. A stroke severs these neurological pathways, creating literal dead zones in the brain tissue. For a world-class vocalist, suffering facial paralysis and muscle weakness is the equivalent of a concert pianist having their fingers suddenly shattered. The damage is catastrophic. Her doctors warned that the neurological trauma could be permanent. The music industry quietly assumed that Susan Boyle's extraordinary story had come to a tragic, silent end. But what nobody realized was that behind the closed doors of her Scottish home, Susan was about to embark on one of the most agonizing, expensive, and secretive medical comebacks in the history of entertainment. But wait, here is the absolute most shocking part of this entire timeline. The exact same neurological trauma that destroyed her voice actually triggered a psychological phenomenon that completely rewired her brain. You see, while the world was busy writing her off and packing away her legacy, Susan was secretly orchestrating an incredibly painful physical rehabilitation. She was spending tens of thousands of pounds on a grueling, 5-hour-a-day regimen that the public was never supposed to know about. And the reason she hid this agonizing process from the media changes absolutely everything you thought you knew about her passive, gentle persona. For the entirety of her career, Susan was painted as a fragile victim of the limelight. People thought she needed to be protected from the harsh realities of the music business. But the stroke revealed an indomitable warrior. Because she lost all of her muscle memory, she essentially had to learn how to speak from scratch. Imagine being a grandmaster chess player who suddenly wakes up and has to be taught how a pawn moves, or an Olympic sprinter who has to spend months just learning how to stand up without falling over. Susan hired top-tier private speech therapists and embarked on intensive vocal coaching sessions. Day after day, week after week, for an entire year, she fought through the profound frustration of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. In order to bypass the dead zones caused by the stroke, Susan's brain had to physically grow new pathways. This process is intensely exhausting, especially for someone in their 60s. It required her to sit in a room and endlessly repeat basic vowels, trying to force her paralyzed facial muscles to obey her command. There were days of absolute despair, moments where the slurred speech simply would not resolve, and times when the sheer physical fatigue of a stroke recovery made her collapse into bed. Yet, she made a promise to herself that she would not let a medical emergency be the final chapter of her story. Her sole aim, her absolute obsession, was to sing on stage just one more time. This monumental, hidden effort finally culminated in June of 2023. Susan Boyle made an unannounced, surprise return to the finale of Britain's Got Talent. She walked out alongside the West End cast of Les Miserables to sing the exact song that had altered her destiny 14 years prior. The stakes could not have been higher. If her voice cracked, if her facial paralysis became evident, or if her breath control failed, she would be broadcasting her physical decline to millions of viewers. It was a terrifying gamble. But as the music swelled, Susan delivered a performance that left the audience in absolute awe. It wasn't until after the song finished that she took the microphone and casually revealed to the world that she had suffered a major stroke the previous April. She told the crowd that she fought like crazy to get back on that stage, and she had finally done it. Simon Cowell, watching from the judge's desk, looked visibly shaken. He told her that he knew she hadn't been well, but he also knew that if anyone possessed the sheer willpower to return from the brink, it was her. This remarkable comeback places Susan in a very rare category of vocal survivors. Historically, when legendary singers experience catastrophic trauma to their instruments, the results are deeply tragic. Take Julie Andrews, whose pristine, four-octave soprano voice was permanently destroyed by a botched vocal surgery in the late 1990s, leaving her unable to ever sing professionally again. Or look at Shania Twain, who contracted Lyme disease that led to severe nerve damage and paralyzed her vocal cords, forcing her into a torturous, years-long journey of physical therapy and open-throat surgery just to be able to project her voice. Even modern superstars like Adele have faced devastating vocal cord hemorrhages that required total silence and intense medical intervention to save their careers. But Susan Boyle's situation was profoundly more complicated than a simple throat injury. She suffered a traumatic brain injury. The command center itself had been damaged. For her to not only regain her speech, but to recover the micromuscular control required to hit operatic notes on live television is nothing short of a medical anomaly. It is a testament to the raw, biological power of human determination. Now, as we move through 2025, the evolution of Susan Boyle continues to shock the public. At 64 years old, she has officially returned to the recording studio. She has announced a slate of new projects, including an upcoming documentary about her life, a potential television drama, and even a cameo in a new Rupert Everett film where she contributes an original song. She is stepping back onto red carpets, looking vibrant, sharp, and totally revitalized. But this brings us to the ultimate truth of why the Susan Boyle we met in 2009 can never return. The woman who walked onto that audition stage was a naive, incredibly vulnerable dreamer who was entirely unprepared for the brutal machinery of global fame. That version of Susan was overwhelmed, often controlled by her management, and swept away by a billion-dollar tidal wave that she could not comprehend. The woman who exists today has walked through the fire of neurological devastation and come out the other side entirely on her own terms. She lost the one thing that made her special, the magical gift that plucked her from obscurity, and instead of mourning it, she fought a brutal, agonizing war to steal it back from the universe. Her voice today carries the weight of that survival. It may have different textures, shaped by the scars of her stroke and the passage of time, but it is backed by an unbreakable spirit. She no longer sings to prove her worth to a panel of mocking judges, and she no longer performs to satisfy the demands of a record label. She sings because she fought for the right to keep her voice. And as she reclaims her throne in the entertainment world, it is clear that the fragile, frightened Susan Boyle of the past is gone forever, replaced by a legendary artist who proved that true talent cannot be silenced by anyone or anything. If you want to understand how the music industry creates and destroys these kinds of overnight legends, you need to look at the dark psychological tactics reality television shows used to manipulate their contestants behind closed doors.